This is Steve Junion. Welcome back to the Design Edge podcast. I'm so excited about this podcast because it is the last one where I'm only talking about myself, the business, the tools I like, people I admire. Once we finish this one, we're going to be interviewing some of the experts in the field that get their hands dirty day in and day out doing the work of human-centered design. So with that, I want to thank my producer and chief motivation officer, Seth. He has been really instrumental as we again try to figure out what this process looks like. We don't want to stop and wait until it's perfect. So there may be some quality issues. We'll work on that. And we're also going to be focusing a little bit more on the structure of the upcoming interviews. I will tell you what, though, I'm very excited. The first couple interviews have gone great. Hopefully you get some great interviews or some great insights out of those. Thanks so much and enjoy.
I ride you like a starboard, hit the sunspot deep in my carbon.
All right, let's get into another quick topic, a little bit about human-centered healthcare and small business. A lot of times people ask, how do you get a small business started? And I'll be honest with you, a lot of us, and I've talked to a number of people who have really sole proprietorships, and that's kind of really the perspective I'm coming from. It's kind of by accident or by necessity. The first time I started up as a consultant and having my own business, so to speak, was when I left Iowa for a dream job, and that dream job lasted about 8 months. By the way, dream jobs should last a lot longer. If you're keeping track, that's probably the shortest dream job anybody's ever had. In any case, my leader at the time, we agreed to disagree, and I found myself without any income. I made some quick calls, and this is to show you the power of the network. And I was able to, again, go back to work at the Boeing company with about 160,000 employees. They're an aerospace manufacturer, amazing technology company, amazing company overall. And I was able to do some consulting with them in their leadership center, which is in Missouri, St. Louis, Missouri, actually outside. So by necessity, I had to start my first small business. I honestly didn't know what I was doing. Luckily, I had a person that had done my taxes that gave me some advice. Again, obviously, the tax laws have changed quite a bit with the new tax proposals. But in any case, that was my first attempt at a business. And when it came to get insurance, this is pre-Affordable Care Act, pre-ACA, we couldn't get health care. One of the members of my family had a pre-existing condition. And if you remember at that time, if you had a pre-existing condition, they could just refuse you. It looks like we may be going that way again, which would be awkward and unfortunate. So hopefully we don't go that way, and we're allowing people to come on to healthcare. But in any case, because of that, I ended up going back into the business world. Now, fast forward probably almost 8, 9, 10 years. And I had the opportunity to leave and do a turnaround, which I knew would have a limited amount of time in terms of me being in a mid-sized company. And that lasted for probably a good 8, 9 months, which was a fantastic experience. Helped take a company from public to private. We got it sold, got it turned around. So when we left on December 31st, they were basically not losing money anymore. That was a great challenge and a tough challenge, but met some lifelong friends there and had a great experience. Following that venture, I had a choice. Do I want to go back into corporate America, which I tried to do a couple different times, but the fit wasn't right? Or do I strike out on my own and or with a couple of other people? Well, the first option as I formed Human-Centered Healthcare was really to join another former colleague of mine and work together on some projects. And really, again, we were both sole proprietorship organizations. Actually, turned mine into an LLC, and he did as well. But what I found was tremendous freedom and flexibility in terms of having my own business. And about 15 years ago, I had written this kind of vision card, identity card, and the core parts of it are joy and flexibility around not only my family and being a husband and being a father, but really also too professionally. And it's really hard once you have your own business, like I did, over a decade ago and have had now for the last couple of years, to not really crave that flexibility that you get when you have your own business. The biggest struggles are constantly, especially if you have not hired someone and you have people on the payroll, is doing multiple roles. right? All startups know this. I am a business developer. I am chief operating, financial officer. I play all of these roles while trying to also do work for my clients. So the biggest struggles are really not necessarily around capital, because to start up a consulting business, you really just need a laptop, and you need a potential credit card for travel and some of those kind of things. It's very minimal to get a business up and running. The challenge is really just to keep it going from a long-term perspective. And I think that's the biggest struggle for any independent operator, whether you're part of the gig economy or what have you, is just to keep that pipeline moving along. And again, I would have to say, as I look back at some recent engagements or some upcoming engagements, it's the power of the network. Doing great work, treating people as you'd like to be treated, that golden rule, really, that has played a huge part in leading me from one opportunity to the next, and has opened a lot of doors for me. One of the most recent successes I had, I'll build off of that, treat others like you'd like to be treated, is I was working with another company. I would call this a legitimate company because George and Latino Connection have a number of people on their payroll, and they're a great company out of Harrisburg, Pennsylvania. And through George's work in the community, he reached out to me and said, hey, there's this healthcare company, one of the big four, that would really like to do some focus groups. Can you provide me some information? And of course, that same day, I got an email from that company saying, hey, we'd like to get a proposal on, at that time, it was 20 focus groups. We've actually brought it down to 14 to meet some other requirements. But in any case, that has now turned into an upcoming gig this summer. And hopefully it's the start of something. And my mindset going in is to really act as a learner. I know they originally wanted focus groups, and absolutely happy to do those. However, as part of our proposal, which eventually made us stand out and made us get chosen, is we're not only going to do focus groups and gather actionable insights, we're also going to go ahead and do personas, build some consumer personas, as well as a journey map to really help them start thinking about the consumer's journey, about where are the pains and gains, get them some consumer personas so then they can spend time when they're thinking about making decisions that impact consumers. They can look at their personas and say, hey, what would Steve react to? You know, how would George react to this if we made this decision? They're very important to really represent the face of the consumer. And I know by using personas in the past that a lot of times being in a meeting, people will say, well, how does this impact Jamie? Jamie, by the way, was a persona at a company 2 companies ago. And Jamie was a single professional mom and had 2 kids. And, every time we were going to do something, we'd say, hey, how's that going to impact Jamie? Or another persona that we had was Bob, who was an over-the-road long-haul truck driver. If we were making a decision on behalf of their company, what does that mean? And I think that's really a testament to not only about what success looks like, but the type of people that you need to keep in your network who are going to not only advocate for you, because advocating for someone is really important, but more importantly, who's going to sponsor you and bring you in to really partner with you on the work, or to go beyond advocating to saying, hey, healthcare company or hospital system, you need to work with human-centered healthcare because they have these kind of capabilities. So that's been an example of a recent success. And a big shout out to George and Latino Connection. They're a fantastic organization. They do a lot of great marketing and so forth on their own. My biggest concern moving forward, again, it always deals with the pipeline. The good news is one of my side interests is all around financial independence, retiring early. It's called the FIRE movement. And for those of you, if you want to cringe, feel free, but I am a Dave Ramsey fan as well, or at least as much as I can be when he doesn't annoy me. Love you, Dave, but there are times, just like myself. I think, the biggest concern is the pipeline. Although I've got a decent runway, there's always the balance of, hey, I'm part of 2 people providing for this family. I've got kids that are getting ready for college, not necessarily fully funded. And then you have things like insurance, which is handled through my wife's employer. There are all these kind of things that play into the factor about, do I stay and continue to maintain human-centered healthcare? And honestly, by all indications, I have been told that I am a very high risk taker, that I am comfortable with that. My response is, I think about it every day. For the most part, I feel really solid and really good about the direction that we're headed, especially with the clients that we're engaging with now, and some potential future clients that take me outside of the healthcare system. So I'm very excited about those opportunities. And a lot of times people say, where do you get the ideas for the stuff that you do? To be honest, I really try to listen hard. Most recently, with these focus groups, personas, and journey map that we're going to be creating, I spent time interviewing people in one particular department, because in my head, I always have this kind of loose strategy. When remember, strategy is not it might be a big word, but it just means plan. So in my head, I had this loose plan about how we were going to engage, and how might the focus groups mixes look, what they might look like, and so on and so forth. However, going through those interviews, and a lot of times that's a default reaction, is to reach out to people and see what's important to them, has taken what was just this concept, very vague concept in my head, and it's become something that I think is not only going to contribute from a focus group perspective, but to the overall organization strategy. And those are the kind of things that really get me excited. And my ideas, honestly, I have a lot of expertise in creating something out of nothing. So if you give me white space and a couple of sentences, I can usually create something from it. It's that refinement process that's really important. And that's what I love about human-centered design thinking, innovation, is the iterative nature of it. And the fact that you're not building something alone. Now, a lot of times the start is building it alone. For example, in this new potential contract outside of the healthcare world, I was asked to put together a proposal that talked about focus groups. And I knew probably about, I don't know, maybe 1% about this organization. And what I ended up doing is pulling from a couple of previous proposals, which there should always be some standard language. Also then really helping to build a potential solution beyond focus groups that pushes the organization's thinking. And through some collaboration, again, with Latino Connection, we built a proposal in about 24 hours. Some people are like, well, you can't build anything of quality. Well, we've gone through 2 or 3 iterations in these 24 hours, and I'm going to get another iteration in this afternoon, which will put us over 24 hours, but we'll be able to deliver something to the client this evening, which will be fantastic. And through that partnership, through being able to create something, even when there's nothing really concrete that you can put in it, that's a really key capability that I think more and more people need to be able to work on. I've always been brought in when people are struggling to get off of Go. And just a little hint, you got to find the right tools that really kind of help get you excited and help you build these. As an example, in terms of how do I get ideas for things, there are some things like from the Six Sigma world, SIPOCs, right? Suppliers, inputs, process, outputs, and customers. It's a tool basically that you can use really to spark your thinking. Another favorite tool, probably my number one tool, is Business Model Canvas. Alex took a number of studies and did a meta-analysis. I think it was for his doctorate. And what he did is he created a 1-page business model canvas that allows you to look at a business, think about their customer segments, think about a value prop, and all these other things. And it quickly really helps you define where you can add value within an organization, a project. And I had one woman that worked for me. She used it on training and learning and development and organizational design. And for the first 4 months when she was in her new job, she tried to test it with something different every week. And she consistently came back and said, I haven't been able to break it yet. So again, while some people might think, hey, you're really great at creating something out of nothing, trust me, I have tools in the background and I try to build from other things that I have available to me. How do I advertise my business? Honestly, I have really been focusing on word of mouth advertisement. And the reason I do that is because I believe in the power of the network. I believe in the power of the relationships I've built. And I've given up on only using the network. I'll be rolling out a website here shortly that Seth has been building for us. But in large part, I do believe in word of mouth and asking your network to sponsor you. I do believe in the power of the network and asking your network to sponsor you for new work. again, it goes back to what do you deliver, and not only what are you able to deliver, but how. I've worked with a lot of people that can deliver but leave a bloody trail behind them, and no one, absolutely no one, wants to do work with them. I've been in situations where I've been part of a group, and the executive has come back to me and said, Steve, we really want to work with you and not anyone else in that particular group. And those are some of the tough decisions that you have to make. However, it does indicate that you're doing the right things for the right reasons, and you're even though you're pushing organizations really outside of their comfort zone, you never take them in the terror zone. You know, you use their money, for example, as an investment in their outcomes and their objectives. It's not about me beating my goals, although every opportunity I take, I'm always learning, I'm always developing, I'm always achieving something that I desire. But if I have an organization that's going to invest in me and pay me to provide services, it's really important to me that I treat their money the same as I treat my own. Okay. What do I look for partners and employees? In terms of partners, I really look for people who are standout, who really get me. It's one of those things where I'm probably an acquired taste or unique at best. I don't have any probably working in the ether and working towards clarity. I like taking risks. A lot of people don't believe that. I like setting audacious, big, hairy goals that others look at me and go, "There's no way you can achieve that," and so that makes people nervous. In terms of employees, I'm looking for people, or if I'm going to hire someone, I am looking for people who are pretty self-sufficient, even if they're brand new in the industry. Man, there's a lot of information out there. I need them to take the initiative to really, if they don't know it, to learn it, and I'll help them put it in practice, because that's really where it's going to play a huge effect. Also, when I look for partners or employees, I'm looking for people who aren't looking for perfection in round number one. As a matter of fact, I also think, in terms of what do I look for partners and employees, there are things that I look for in terms of organizations that I work with. One of the most recent organizations I worked with for about 18 months in the healthcare space, they sent me a plaque with my name on it, and I had a new title. I think it was Master of the Shitty First Draft. And I am so proud of that nameplate. I've got to get it mounted. And the reason why they sent that to me is because I taught them not to overthink what they're doing. Sometimes you just have to, like Nike, do something. You have to take a risk. You have to go talk to your consumers. And as you do that, and as the culture starts doing that, you start building up a tolerance, and your comfort zone and the terror zone keep moving out. And as you become more comfortable using some of these concepts and tools, you look back 6 months or a year later and you go, wow, I can't believe we've had 400 people go through this, or we've run 3 design sprints, and we're in double-digit potential savings or estimated savings, coming up with prototypes to serve their members. So I think not only do you need to know what you look at in terms of partners and employees, when you sign a contract with another organization, you're hiring them as well. So you need to think about what is the fit with them. To be brutally honest, I'm not a fit with every organization. I'm not a fit with someone who needs perfection from start one, or who is willing to wait 18 months for progress. Because usually, we start working as we're finalizing the statements of work, getting everything procurement. And I'm good with that, because even if something doesn't go through, the worst thing that can happen is that potential client, for whatever reason, says, I can't do work with you. At least they have a solid plan to move forward with, and that makes me happy. What are human-centered healthcare's company goals? I have some financial goals. I prefer not to share. There is some good research out there anymore that talks about not sharing your goals is a good thing, where previously it was felt if you told people your goals, you'd be able to achieve them better. There's some counter research to that. There's counter research to everything. It just depends on what you want to look at. But I think when I think about the more ethereal goals, is I want to continue to work in the healthcare space and move beyond that, move beyond healthcare from the standpoint, as an example. For example, I have a potential client that works in let's call it the food space. and I see food as health. And so when I think about the core of what I do and what I want human-centered healthcare to be about in terms of the consumer, in terms of payers, insurance companies, uh, provider practices, hospitals, kind of the core of what you think about in terms of healthcare. I also want to extend kind of the adjacencies and think about transportation, because transportation is a big impact on health. Food has a big impact on health, and food insecurity is a big thing that I've been able to get involved with in previous roles. What's unique about my business? What is unique about my business? To be honest with you, I use no as a last resort. I always feel like there's a way. And I got to give credit to some of the leadership at the Boeing company, because they had some values around um, finding your way through ambiguity. You know, they had some things around being creative and innovative. And I think the thing that I've learned the most is most of the times I don't have the answer. I just need to find one or two people that have some good insights. They may not have the answer, but have some great insights that help me facilitate the organization or a team to that answer. And so I think that's what's unique about my business, is that we really facilitate change. You know, we facilitate helping people move from a transactional based, product or service to a relationship based focused on impacting their consumer, which thereby impacts their financial and business impact. So doing good by doing good. I think a lot of people that work in the healthcare space that really do similar work to what I do. And again, there are some amazing organizations that I really need to reach out to say, I'd really like to work with you. I've started doing that. But I think any of us that are working on putting the patient or the member, the person at the center of the healthcare system, I think we have the potential to have significant impact on the communities. So, so you want to move beyond the usual suspects and start thinking about things like transportation and food and uh, uh, jobs and those kind of things, because healthcare is not going to be able to solve all of the challenges and problems they have with their patients or members on their own. Those who realize that are on the way to winning. Those that are focusing on public-private partnerships are going to win. And when I had the opportunity to be at Humana as part of their Bold Goal effort, and you can check that out online, Humana's Bold Goal Report, they do a report every year. They are actually impacting, and part of the work that I started with Humana is impacting Healthy Days, which is a measure of how many days did you feel like you could do something that you wanted to do, or maybe you couldn't because of either physical or behavioral health issues. It's so exciting. That work was so incredibly exciting to do, to get out there with grocery stores, to get out there with corporations and say, how can we make this a better place for people to live, work, and play? And that's really beneficial. And I think organizations that undertake this movement from a transactional based approach to a relationship based approach with their consumers has the opportunity to achieve great things with the community as well. Because honestly, a lot of what you could be doing in the healthcare system, someone else is already doing it. So why spend all that money and have that redundancy when you could partner with someone? And my goal for human-centered healthcare is to help bring those parties together, both corporate and nonprofits and state and local governments together, to really build solutions that are systemic in nature. Sometimes people ask me, have you ever turned down a client? The answer is no. That's the short answer. However, with everything that you do, you have to put a price on what that effort looks like. So if I have a client that is really challenging, not willing to bend or flex, I price that differently than I do with someone who is really willing to take the risk, really willing to get on the surfboard me and try to ride out some waves, even though they're going to be choppy and bumpy. So while I may never turn down a client, I will price accordingly. And sometimes I outprice myself with certain clients, and I'm okay with that. I think that's part of the flexibility that I have having my own company. And I think there are a number of questions that need to be asked in healthcare. Um, and maybe I can't come up with specifics. The questions, though, need to be about thinking outside of my particular organization. So maybe here's an example. If I'm in a hospital system and I'm trying to solve for people who are not participating in their programs and ending up in the ER, I probably need to ask questions about who else can support and who else can help me. In one case, in one of the Humana-Bold Role markets, they started including the EMTs and the fire department. So when they had a call, they wouldn't necessarily directly take them to the ER, but there were opportunities to take people out to an urgent care if they didn't need the ER service. Now, obviously, if they needed an emergency room, they would take them there because they were the EMTs, they had an ambulance there. But those kind of partnerships are absolutely critical. The challenges with organizations is that they have to open up and be transparent, right? Everybody will say, hey, our company is so transparent. Yeah, no, not so much. A lot of times what happens is that you need to be open enough so that people understand the financial impact to you, right? Um, and work together on joint business plans and business cases and return on investment. Because let's be honest, if it's your parent or grandparent or someone that you love and you care about, and they are financially struggling, and they get sent to an ER, would you rather have them go to an ER when an urgent care or their primary care physician doctor can take care of it? Now, a lot of people say, well, Steve, I know, and I've heard this. I go to the emergency room and I don't pay it because I don't have the money, and they just write it off. And I say, great. And what ends up happening, though, is you never get your problem taken care of. You need a primary care physician or a doctor that you go to frequently to really be able to solve what the root problem is or the root cause. So I think as what I try to do is I try to work with organizations to open themselves up more and to go outside of their four walls and to work with other organizations. The crazier, the better, you know. The more that corporations can work with nonprofits and local and state government from a healthcare system perspective, the better off we're all going to be. You know, eventually I would like to take human-centered healthcare to what I would consider a full-fledged business, to where I have 10 to 15 employees at the most. I don't ever think I want to go beyond that 10 to 15 range in terms of employees, or a certain revenue amount that I have in my head. Because I have always thrived. Well, I've thrived in a lot of different types of organizations, but I love the startup organization. I do love the fact that I have to wear multiple hats, and I don't ever want to lose that. And I want to bring on people that are entrepreneurial, that are weird and quirky like me, and think differently, and that want to not create a bunch of PowerPoint slides for someone and then say, good luck implementing. I want to hire people that want to grind it out, that get in the dirt, work on 12-month projects that nobody else wants to, because they just want to hand over the PowerPoint and the recommendations. To me, if I have a dream for where I'm going with 10 to 15 employees, it's a level of intimate relationship with corporations and organizations where they see us as critical to helping them not only build their strategies, but also to execute them. And I think, that's happening. It's happening now, basically as a sole proprietor, and having Seth and some other people on standby for anything that I need. There's a great community out there of freelancers in this space, and they're absolutely amazing. You need to get into that network if you're not. But really, it's taking it from what I'm learning and sharing with other people so that they can be successful. As far as reaching out to people for inspiration, you can go as far as YouTube. IDEO has an amazing channel out there around human-centered design and design thinking. If you haven't watched some of the IDEO videos, you're just missing out. If you haven't watched some of Alex's from Business Model Canvas, and I think it's Osterwalder, we'll try to put some link in the show notes about that. But Alex has some great videos on the Business Model Canvas. It is not hard. It is not hard at all to find inspiration for this. Honestly, and if you're lacking inspiration, get off your ass, go outside, and just talk to someone. Talk to someone you don't know. Talk to someone in your neighborhood that you don't know. Go to a food court. A lot of times in our immersion experiences, I'll have people, I want to say force, how about wildly encourage versus force? We wildly encourage, and it's part of the immersion experiences, to go out and talk to consumers to help us solve a potential problem that we develop as part of the immersion experience. And the whole purpose behind that is to get them feeling comfortable to eventually talk to their customers. You would be absolutely amazed at how many people, when you say, when was the last time they've talked to their customer, if they're not a frontline person. Big shout out to our frontline people working with customers every day and sometimes taking massive meetings because of our horrible policies and processes and all that stuff. And if they have that deer in the headlight look, they're terrified. The only way to get them from that into a learning mode is to get them exposure and experience to failing. In our immersion experience, we don't give a whole lot of guidance on the 2 to 3 questions we want them to ask a series of consumers, typically 5 to 6 consumers, to bring back some observations and insights. But it's also about pushing them farther than where they've been in a group setting. A lot of times I will, in our immersion experiences, I will ask people who is absolutely terrified of doing this, raise your hand now or forever hold your peace. And what I do is I'll put one of those people in with a group of extroverts that are bouncing off the wall, which drive us all crazy. And I'm one of them, so I can say that. And I'll put that person in a group with a bunch of extroverts. And by interview number 2, sometimes by interview number 3, what ends up happening is after the initial introduction by the extrovert is done, the person that's terrified actually takes over the conversation. They become this amazing interviewer. The biggest challenge they end up having, though, is that the start of that initial conversation. So again, to wrap up inspiration, I think the biggest thing that anyone can do in terms of inspiring themselves is to go out and talk to current, past, or more importantly, future employers, knowing that you're going to get rejected. When I used to work in the sales training realm, one of the things that I picked up and I incorporated early on was some wisdom from somebody who had been selling for 30 years and was always in the top salesperson position, right? No matter what company they were at, they're always in the top. And they said, you know what, Steve, just a little piece of advice, but if you're going to go sell something, don't ever go to your best client first. Go to the person that never wants to buy anything, that almost throws you out of the office. And by the way, I went with that person and I got thrown out of 2 offices with them. And he told me the story afterwards. He said, you know why we went here? I said, what, to get thrown out? And he said, exactly. Because they hate the company that we're with. They despise us. But what they also do is they give us feedback as we're walking out the door. And he said, I would never take a new product to my best customer ever, unless I really knew that there was a gap and it would close that gap. So let me throw that caveat in there. But it was great advice, and it's something that I follow. The whole point is you got to get off your backside and get out there, though. So if you're feeling anything other than excited, just go talk to some consumers and make stuff up. Talk to them about some product that you're curious about. Some things that I do for myself or tell myself every day. And this assumes that my workout bag is not locked in a vehicle that is awaiting parts, but I do try to get out 5 times a week to exercise. I'm a big fan of swimming. It's the best way to clear my mind. I was a walk-on Division III swimmer. There's a story behind that, but not to walk-on quarterback, but a walk-on Division III swimmer. But I had a great time, and that physical part for me is something that I really do every day to take care of myself. And also, I tell myself that when I wake up, I'm going to make mistakes every day. As part of this introductory podcast to who I am, you heard me say my fail counter is at X, and I haven't kept my fail counter up to date, but I usually use little tick marks. And some days it gets pretty brutal. And on those days, I do a lot more reflection, but I am trying to push. I am trying to help people move forward. I'm trying to push myself. And so a lot of times the unintended or intended consequences in some case is to make people feel uncomfortable. And again, I'm okay with that. I've taken on that role, and my job is to not only make them feel uncomfortable or push them, but also help them put a hand out, help them get back up.
Like
And
you
so
never
forth.
heard before. Leave the light on, sitting in positions like yoga, moving through solar system. My beloved is reflected in the spectrum of the prism.
All right, well, that's it, folks. Thanks again for listening. Hopefully, we've shared a few insights about the work that we do across these first 3 podcasts. Again, I'm super excited. Next week, we've got Mark McFerron coming up. Mark is not only an artist by trade, but he is also an amazing creative director, designer, facilitator, so many different things. So if you made it through these three initial podcasts, trust me, it's only going to get better. Thanks so much for listening to The Design Edge, and until next time.